Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sertaç Karaman. I'm a professor in aeronautics and astronautics here at MIT. I'm also the director of MIT's Laboratory for Information and Decision Systems. And I have the honor and the pleasure today to introduce Refik Anadol. Refik is a renowned media artist and a director. He's a pioneer in digital arts. He runs the Refik Anadol Studio and teaches at UCLA's Department of Design Media Arts, where he also obtained his Master of Fine Arts degree. His work addresses the challenges and the possibilities that computing has imposed on humanity. At the intersection of art, science, and technology, his absolutely beautiful three-dimensional data sculptures, his paintings, his live performances, and his immersive installations have really transformed the world of digital art. In fact, most recently, one of his artworks called Unsupervised was acquired by the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And it's the first generative AI and tokenized artwork in its collection. Yesterday, we had a wonderful discussion with Refik when he told us about his travels to the Amazon forests in Brazil and his interaction with the natives there. We discussed how people used to be so much more connected with the nature even just a few hundred years ago, and how technology, going as far back as the Industrial Revolution or even as far back as the Agricultural Revolution, has impacted the human experience, our day-to-day living. And if I could introduce Refik with just one sentence, I would say that Refik explores what it means to be human in this new age of AI and digitization. Refik, it's a huge pleasure to have you here at MIT. We look forward to your talk. Please welcome Refik Anadol.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm extremely excited. And I know there's so many scientists in the room, and then quantification-wise, 123 BPM. It is my respect and love to the MIT community. There are so many heroes in this room, so many mentors. And this is my deep respect and love for the communities. Thank you very much for Daniela and the president for inviting to talk. This is a very special moment for me to be here in also Cambridge. I literally came from Brazil, and I have this very special moment happen a couple of days ago. I'm not only just Refik, I have a new name given by a family called Yavanava. They are first people in Amazonia living in rainforests for 1,000 years, and that's the name. And what it means is Chana Kını. Chana is the bird that you see on the right, and the Kını is these beautiful drawings that they share when they had a feeling in spirituality, emotions, and deep in the jungle. And I will connect this to generative AI, and I hope that to connect this incredibly deep connection of nature and AI, and hope to have your attention. I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey, where I was born in, and the place where I believe West and East truly connect geographically, physically, emotionally, and naturally. And the city has an ultra deep impact on my practice that I believe where the virtual and the physical connection of practicing in the arts truly comes from. I was also 8 years old, nerding with the machines very early ages. My mother completely by a coincidence, as a beautiful gift happened at 8 years old, a Commodore, and I started playing games, still clinically addicted to games till high school, and I truly believe that the idea of one day machine becomes a tool, AI becomes a tool, is coming from the early ages. But also I watched this incredibly inspiring movie. I was 8 years old. I didn't know English. My cousin translated to English. I hope he did a good job. And he told me this story of this incredible moment. And I clearly remember that this flying car next to a media facade in a near future of Los Angeles, where the media architecture is transforming the future of the cities. But I got also a very funny critic from someone said that I don't understand dystopia, but actually, critic missed the point. As a child, when we watch a movie, even dystopian, we still keep our utopia, hope, inspiration, and joy. I think I'm trying my very best to hold dear into these emotions, even the most hardest days of humanity. So this movie, even it has a different context and discourse, to me, it is the future that we can do positive things. And in my practice, 2008 started programming, which is a software called the VVVV. It's a visual programming language that allows you to create computer graphics, connect like sensors, even right now, inferences with AI models. My first early practice was truly like Blade Runner inspired the idea of embedding media arts into architecture, transforming cultural beacons into interfaces where we can explore going beyond concrete, steel, and glass, and how light can become a material. And over the years, these become very early practices and find purpose through these surfaces of the building. And as Kierkegaard mentioned, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. I truly start to think about the idea of data of 2009 and 10. And 2008, actually, I was very fortunate to work closely with Peter Weibel, who we lost recently. And he has been truly encouraging me in the early days of like programming, visual programming languages. And I truly inspired the idea of data to me is not just numbers, JSON or CSV or DBs, but it's kind of a form of a memory. And this memory, I think, can take any shape and form. So my obsession about these data paintings, data sculptures, are truly coming 2008 in this inspiring class in Istanbul. In the very early days of 2011, I was able to practice with the sound data from the public space and try to learn how to parameterize this information in the form of physical representations. And also extremely inspired by our cognitive capacity of reality, how it starts and how it ends, or maybe never ends. But this idea of like finding pigmentation of dreams that are much more inspiring than just representing reality. And by the way, you will see this frame a lot in my work. It's a rejection, actually, a failure. 2011, I was trying to put this giant frame around the building for Istanbul Biennale, and the curator kindly said that this is a ridiculous idea to put like a frame. And since that day, that I always remember, perhaps if one day data become a pigment, perhaps it can try to live in these dimensional surfaces. But also in my practice, I got truly inspired by the idea of, as humanity, how we're all connected to each other. And not necessarily quantification of the machine, software, and hardware, but how our perception of physical and virtual worlds are completely transforming. And especially this reinforcing our understanding of cultural gentrification and space of displacement when it comes to like machines, and how our families are completely like reshifting ourselves, and also how we are becoming these machines that are controlled by machines. I love this idea of like who are controlling whom, and the sense of displacement. I'm pretty confident, many of us, the first thing we see in the morning a machine, the last thing is the machine also when we are before sleeping. So I thought that there's so much here to respond and research. So I moved to Los Angeles to study at UCLA Design Media Arts Department, where I met also with wonderful pioneers and mentors, Rebecca Allen of MIT also, alumni, Casey Rias, who were truly my mentors in the MFA studies. But I found myself in the streets, not in the, because sometimes digital artists believe to be in rooms of machines and computers or GPUs or whatever. But I found myself on the streets trying to augment understand how to use public installations, projections, and really learn how to use city as a canvas instead of just being closed in a room. And my really big dream, because of Blade Runner, is the building Frank Gehry's also CCL, like a beautiful building designed by Frank Gehry, my hero. I love his building so much. The first night I came to LA, rent a car at 2 a.m., went downtown to see this beautiful building. And my dream was I will see some beautiful, shiny, incredible sci-fi building. But in fact, at 2 a.m., City of Los Angeles shut down lights. It was the darkest building maybe I ever saw. There was no reflection on this building. And since that moment, I remembered that I will hopefully one day let this building dream and hallucinate. And I know it sounds very interesting now, 11 years ago, but luckily, I was invited by Microsoft Research, and I was on the stage, by the way, talking about Gustavo Dudamel, the conductor of LA Philharmonic, saying that one day, maybe the building will remember every single memories that ever drawn in it. And by the way, I'm on a stage with my short, no idea where I am. And apparently this was a very important day. And next morning, I received a significant academic award, and this allowed Frank Gehry's studio to start believing the project. And that's how I got the first drawings from the Frank Gehry of the building, and 2014 graduated. But my purpose was not alone, trying to be alone. I do believe that there's an incredible African proverb that if you're going to go faster, do it alone, but if you're going to go further, do it together. So this was like a very profound, in my heart, call for becoming a studio, not necessarily like an egocentric one solo world. And also, I had this really deep question: what does it really mean to be a human in the 21st century? And I think many artists like myself, practicing and learning about humanity and inspired and inspiration back, I thought that this can only be done by a team. So I'm happy to say that these are my giants, that I'm on their shoulders. We can speak 15 languages, represent 10 countries. We have AI engineers, data scientists, architects, scholars, musicians, neuroscientists. We try to understand how we can create these new experiences for humanity. And last 9 years, I do believe that the main focus for our studio was art, science, and technology, and try to find where AI, neuroscience, and architecture can connect. And most importantly, how humans, machines, and environments can create this symbiosis, a new world of narratives. And if you look at this short show reel, that I was not really inspired by the idea of being only in a gallery or a museum, but try to be on the street. And I do believe that public art is the most powerful and the most profound form of art that doesn't have a beginning or an end, has a door or a ceiling or a wall. And it can be for open to anyone, everyone, any age, any background, and any culture. I do believe that one of the purpose of using AI, generative AI, or using data collectively, we have a chance to find the language of humanity. And I know it's a very optimist, very utopic maybe sounds, but without being wishful thinker or a positive thinker, I do believe that is possible. Last 9 years, we look for many different information. Sometimes we use biosensing, such as heartbeat data, brain signals. We look for the Wi-Fi signals, Bluetooth signals. We look multi-billion images of collective memories of humanity. And I call them collective memories of humanity because our fundamental goal is try to find this collective dreams of humanity, maybe collective consciousness of humanity. And it's really try to find these new ways of speculating new materials. And I do believe that the future of imagination with neural networks and new ways of thinking materials, there's a lot of room for creators to reinvent new contexts and discourse for humanity. But I think today the most important topic that I would like to share was a start point for me and my studio, how we start with generative AI or AI in general. It was 2016, February, maybe now it's 7 years, feels like 70 years for AI researchers. I was so fortunate to work with one of the dearest friends in the field. And you will see a lot of terms. I say AI data painting, AI data sculpture, AI performances. And this whole started for me 2016, February. There was a wonderful event in Gray Area in San Francisco. I do believe it was the very first time an event about neural network and art. And there was this open source community gathering with the Google friends, and Blaise Agoré-Arcas was one of them. And in his speech, he was mentioning, like the invention of applied pigments, printing, press, photography, and computers, we believe machine intelligence is an innovation that will profoundly affect art. And it was that day, 2016 February, I became the first artist in residence at Google. And it was a completely incredible moment because as an artist that don't know how to use AI but work with data, and I'm pretty confident many of you remember these backpropagation experiments in the Deep Dream software, which was and I think they called it Inception after the film, and was developed for the ImageNet Large-Scale Visual Recognition Challenge in 2014 and released in July 2015. And Mike Tyka and Karen McDowell, who were back in time in that research group, they allowed me and my team to deep dive into the concept of machine hallucinations. By the way, I want to say something. People sometimes asking, what does it mean to have a artist in residence in such a giant company? I said, it was very inspiring actually because they asked, hey, who you want to meet? Because Ian Goodfellow, the founder of GANs, and it was an amazing time to connect and learn and research. But to me, what was inspiring, one more thing. It was, I kindly asked them what happens if an AI scientist, neuroscientist, artist, and a shaman can come together. And it was a really exciting 8 hours of dialogues. And in the deep dialogues, I have been sharing about the idea of many things. But this book and the story library of Babel by the Borges became this very fundamental idea of my research. And not only just focus on information or knowledge, which maybe LLMs is in this closing to knowledge, I personally profoundly found wisdom as the most inspiring stage. But also what was really inspiring to me was not mimicking reality, but the hallucinations, dreams, and fantasies where I think many artists are more inspired from. Anyways, in this research, I was so fortunate to dive into like a 1.7 million documents of an open source archive in Istanbul, in SALT. Our curator Vasif Kortun invited to dive in this incredible information. For more than 6 years, 9 researchers, one by one, each image tagged by the 49 columns of metadata. It was a profoundly inspiring start point. And on the left side, we are seeing 6 years of research. On the right side, the same thing with AI, probably less than 9 minutes, sorted by the same information. And we were able to create Archive Dreaming. It's a public installation, open and free to everyone. You go through this like corridor and land in a room where you can real-time interact with 1 million documents. But the concept was Archive Dreaming is in a world where we learn what this reality is coming from, what happens if a machine can dream and hallucinate. And that was really inspiring speculation 7 years ago, the idea of like who will define what is real. And to me, what was really also inspiring is not only just reconstruct the idea of library knowledge and accessing like information, but what happens if we don't have like a search bar? What happens if we go to a library and try to see the things that we don't know? Or even like when we go to a library, I'm pretty confident like many of us have this like, dilemma of like what exists in this here, and how can we see this beyond just our, starting points of like nature of quest? And then we also try to like learn what happens if there's no shelves, respectfully everything in physical world. I love books, I'm in love with touching books, but what happens if we can still fly in the information through latent spaces? And this project later also triggered another question. Can data become a pigment? And this, in this context, I do believe, as an artist, released from the Newtonian physics of like this, realization of like materials in life, I believe that if data becomes a pigment, doesn't need to dry, and it can always in flux. And that was an experiment on the left side. Now it's very ancient, I know, 7 years ago, training a DC-GAN model. And on the right side, I started exploring fluid dynamics and recognition of like how machine dreams its next latent points. But what was really, to me, more inspiring is the idea of putting a camera in the mind of a machine. And to me, it's inventing a new brush, the brush that I can kind of dip into the machine, maybe learn consciousness and paint with that material. And to do that, of course, we had to tap in latent space. And last 7 years, we worked with more than multi-billion images and trained more than 300 AI models. We look at images and sound and text, but really what to me, more inspiring part was not necessarily let AI autonomously define what is next, but truly co-create and generate this new thinking brush. And to make it happen, we write this custom software last 5 years, which I'm calling Latent Space Browser, which is a kind of a joystick, literally, on my hand. And on the right side, we are seeing a GAN model. And on the left side, it's a sample from this model that allows me to fly and find these latent space points and let them connect and really augment these 9 layers of parameters. So to me, there's a massive human intervention and work and intention, and that's, I think, really very exciting before generative AI's recent diffusion models. This was our like a really core research for 5 years. And of course, these materials transforms into many paintings and sculptures. And even though they may look similar, in fact, the core image, the core movement, the color space, and the movement type, viscosity, like there is a lot of material qualities that allows me and team to go different directions. But of course, not only for just screens, and by the way, for when people, like recently, some art critic that doesn't have any connection with the field of computation and the people dreaming with technology and art, and so they may look like a screensaver or lava lamp. But to me, when you just really deep dive into the context and discourse, connect with the meaning and purpose, there's a whole different world to discover. And this also comes to like my very inspiring connection with also Jensen Huang. Like what was really interesting is almost now 5 years ago when the ray tracing happened, it was this moment that finally real-time graphics were advancing and adding reflection to like a real-time graphics, adding like shadows to like real-time graphics. I don't think that the art world understood that revolution is not only in AI context, but about the representing reality through computer graphics was completely changing. So this was really interesting for us as a studio diving these very early first ray tracing algorithms and learning a lot. But also for me, what was really transforming the idea of sculpting with data and AI. So this is, for example, Rumi, Persian poet, died in Konya in Turkey. His Masnavi in 19 language. what I found so inspiring is if we put AI as this intermediate tool between us and the knowledge, it can listen and learn and reconstruct these realities. These are 6-dimensional plottings from the UMAP algorithm of X, Y, Z, and RGB points, and the similarities and distances and the points are completely aesthetically reformed in the studio as an artistic representation. Or the Mozart's entire life, that's 1784 to 1791, all his works. So to me, they are not just data plottings. I think they are a form of sculptures we can fly in, and we can 3D print, and we can maybe one day do other things. But as Carl Sagan mentioned, imagination will often carry us to the worlds that never were, but without it we go nowhere. What else could we do with these, like, for example, data plottings? Here's our project a couple of years ago. On the stage, if you can see, a giant TSNE sculpture while the LA Philharmonic is singing, and was Paradis, and it was real-time reacting and transformed by the Schumann's notations recognized by the lower dimensional reduction. And similar idea can be applied to many other fields. For example, this is a piece in Palazzo Strozzi in Renaissance, in the home of Renaissance. And the curator of the Palazzo Strozzi invited us to train an AI model with all the sculptures of Renaissance. And it was an inspiring day for us because our data sculpture was next to Donatello. And it was this moment of dialogue between the past and the future. And then we were able to create this new kind of symbiotic relationship with the past and the future. So the creators around the AI research and customized AI models and working closely with curators allow us to see and create a new dialogue between centuries-old information. But it's not only that, we also explore real-time representation of the same data. And we know that Beethoven's Missa Solemnis is heavily inspired by the similar area of sculptures based on his notes. And here, same model on stage, 120 musicians in Philadelphia Orchestra, real-time interacting with the model, and inferencing through their beautiful voice, and creating this new kind of an opera. That I know there are many heroes in the Media Lab that also explore this world, that how we can really connect this new being as an opera, as a stage manager or a co-creator with us. And the other topic that I have been really inspired when AI allowed us to go is this very unfortunate moment, I guess 2016, 17, when I went to Istanbul. I recognized that my uncle has an Alzheimer's disease. And it was this moment that I came from LA with this joy and inspiring moment with all these people that I started to know with this excitement. But learning that he basically losing his memories was a truly heavy hit. And since that moment, I was so fortunate, also connected with Rosalind Picard of Media Lab, and thanks to her and Empatica, and also our other connection, Professor Adam Gasly from UCSF. So I really deep dive in this idea of can we recognize the moment of remembering? And can we transform this moment into a painting and sculpture? And of course, in scientific context, have been researched in many ways, and of course, fMRI, DTI, and other forms of exploration was possible. But from an artistic and a more reachable level of research, we went with an EEG and an Empatica device that allowed us to quantify the moment of remembering. Thanks to Adam Gasly's lab that we learned this. And I'm really, really inspired by the idea of biosensing and really understanding how we, without typing, still using our gestures and emotions, and try to find these connections in this art-making era. And I want to show you something tangible, something quantifiable. With this very similar approach, last year we received an incredible data from Lausanne Hospital, 5 children's positive healing in their mind disease that turned all healed, 5 children's, and they allowed us to use their data, and EEG, DTI, fMRI data sets, and we transformed them into this data sculpture. So what you see here is representation of that data set, data dramatization of that data set. And what you see also is a 10 meter by 10 meter data sculpture, and then was also auctioned at UNICEF, and we raised 1.7 million euro for UNICEF. So it's very doable that generative AI and data can really make an impact. And I do believe this was the largest donation to UNICEF for the young minds' health and support. So as a studio, we also try to connect these important causes and try to connect data and science and art and bridge these moments. And the music is also data sonification from the same data as well. And the other topic is, again, really in the pandemic, also thanks to another MIT professor, Hashim Sarkis. He was the curator of Venice Biennale architecture. He invited to participate in the Venice Biennale architecture. And I was so fortunate also, I think MIT is a part of this project, Human Connectome project. We were able to create an almost realistic tractographic outputs. I think kind of a VAE GAN research with like 6,000 people's research. I think it was a 75 terabytes of data that we got from the Professor Taylor Kuhn of UCLA. And then we analyze this information and try to hallucinate new tractographic connections in the mind. And then later we look at certain like emotions such as inspiration, joy, and hope, and try to speculate new neural connections in the form of architecture, where one day perhaps we can create a school about inspiration, a hospital about hope, and maybe performing arts about more. So this was like a really inspiring research on how we can reconstruct this information through AI's hallucinations and recompose new form of like art making and space making. And as far as I know, this was one of the largest real-time data ever loaded on a like back in time A100 a GPU to like sort that multi-million fibers of tractography, which is then later used in the scientific domain. So it's not just a shiny pixels or hallucinations, it's a functional tool to be used in the scientific domain. And then this research was kind of our last part in the before the pandemic era, and I was really get much more inspired with this topic of embedding AI into architecture. I do believe that future of architecture is incredibly inspiring when the generative AI, tool making, and if we see light as a material, which is a particle, a wavelength, or spiritually important, or like surviving life important, I believe light and data, and of course eventually AI, when they connect, can create a new form of architecture, which I call it synesthetic architecture, where the senses are becoming, and the feelings of maybe the building and the like audiences can be connected. Like imagine this building, for example, has this context of remembering or memory context that can remember every single talk ever done in this building. So this is LA Philharmonic building for the last 100 years, playing in Los Angeles, last 20 years in this building. So this was like the MFA project, by the way, that I got the award on with my white shirt on the stage. And that was the project that I was able to come back after 4 years with LA Philharmonic, thanks to Frank Gehry. We were able to create this installation by 42-channel projectors and then reconstruct the topology of the building. And thanks to Frank Gehry and his team, we were able to take the original CATIA model, which is a very now historic file system, and we reconstruct the original 3D software and reconstruct topology of the building and the backbone, which is not visible, and create this new kind of a canvas. And Gehry thinks that it's kind of a skin of the building that we give a life through information. And then this transformed into a public installation. We received more than 100,000 people in 5 nights, open and free to public. And this transformed the building into a kind of a cultural beacon. And what we are watching is the last parts of the like a 30 minutes long performance, which was transforming the original image, text, and sound archive of the institution. And the music we are also seeing back in time, Google Magenta, Doug Actim allowed us to like use very early RNNs to like create compositions. And we created these like, a Mahler to Stravinsky to Mozart to Beethoven, kind of mixture of every single last 70 years of sound recordings, transformed into this like new kind of a tool making. And then later in the performance, we connect what is unreal to real to celebrate the last concert of the LA Philharmonic. It was a really inspiring moment to see how this artwork also received significant response, but the institution, non-profit institution LA Philharmonic, in the gala night, responded very positively from the community. And I do believe that this was one of the reasons in the pandemic, Philharmonic Orchestra survived from the challenging days of a pandemic. So the art forms in this scale can create a quantifiable impact for the institutions beyond just shiny pixels. And this became our research, so we have been doing this in many scales and worked with Zaha Hadid and Gaudi and many more, and I will be sharing you more and how AI and data institutionally can connect and reconstruct new realities. And the other project that I think we got a significant positive response was this machine hallucination NYC. 2018, just right after the Disney Hall project, we dive into the city as a context. I love cities. I believe cities are more important than sometimes many states and countries because they are like the living backbones of like our life, where we all communicate and commute. So we dive in this context of latent cinema for the cities. We were able to work with 130 million images of New York and try to reconstruct this kind of a storytelling by using neural networks. So this is a one representation, for example. VGG16, the algorithms we use in this project that we transformed in Chelsea Market, this boiler room with 14 channel projectors that for example, one of the part of the installation, we are literally physically, flying through in the VGG16 and like before it defines, the neural network decisions. And in one of the chapters, which is machine hallucinations, where we can also see how the, GAN algorithm reconstructing 100 million plus molecules and reshaping, reformatting the room itself. So this was a really exciting research for us because while we got a significant audience reaction, quantifiably more than 500,000 people, I believe is a big data set to talk about. And we got this very positive moment of like inspiration about the idea of like exploring neural networks as a form of storytelling, but also reconstructing this reality on the form of an architecture or a museum or a gallery where we can be connected with these neural nets through new ways of expressions. And I think these last 5 years we did very similar installations in different contexts because each building we look for different data. For example, this is in Istanbul, a 110 years old theater where we were able to look 100 movies and then let our AI algorithm look at the scenarios of these movies and then later project the movies that played in the room back to the room itself, or even like explore the movies that have been played in the room back to itself as well. So you can imagine that this idea of architectural memory, and with AI models and data analysis, we can just really find this new exciting imagination. And of course, this moment that, as we all remember, the day of the name of the week here in MIT, I believe that we also entered into a new world, which I'm calling it generative reality. I do believe that these early GAN inversion methods, right, combined with the CLIP, which enabled zero-shot image manipulation guided by the text prompts, that era was not only changed the field of science and AI, but also changed the field of arts again after that in GAN research. And we were very honestly never dreamed that we will be connected with the people who are pioneering these fields, but we were so excited that all the like very early research, we have been connected with like early like pioneers of research. But I think what was really for us 2021, before DALL-E 2 was public, an OpenAI team and we open a Slack channel literally start like talking about what happens if this very small group of people explore an early DALL-E as well. So this is a Zaha Hadid architecture collaboration. On the top row, these are very early plottings from the DALL-E, and on the lower part, which I was so happy to challenge the architects to see if we can 3D print, 3D model these two-dimensional worlds. This is very before, like 2.5 years is like already a lot of time, I know. But it was really inspiring to think about how this new generative AI field is transforming not only just the science, but also architecture, art making, chance, and control. So it was a really so fantastic to deep dive in these neural networks and in different fields and connect the architecture, arts, and science in this field. And then also we are super deeply connected with the cultural gatherings. I do believe that the future we are going for is inspiring, but also have certain questions because this AR, XR, and VR provides us very singular experiences. But I still believe that we have still things to discover in physical world. I still believe that so many surfaces in the world can transform into canvas, and they can bring us together in the public art. So this is Gaudi's building, Casa Batlló in Barcelona, another pandemic project that we were honored to inspire and invited by the family who is maintaining the building. It's a UNESCO heritage building, and it's a really special one. But most importantly, because of UNESCO heritage, the building has this 1.2 billion point LiDAR scanning, and incredibly rich information. And I thought that perhaps it's a time to maybe talk about the living architecture. The idea of the building itself has these sensors where it can feel the weather patterns and the rain and the humidity and so on. And perhaps we can create this system that can take the data in real time and transform the facade into this living organism. And in the between time, we also look at the Gaudi's entire life and how he has been responding through the social media. But to me, this was this moment of like realizing, like on the very left side, the humidity, in the middle, the rain, and on the right side, the weather patterns are the wind patterns, and the gust is transforming the building into this like this artwork that is constantly shape-shifting in real time in a game engine. But to me, this literally inspired me one day, perhaps this can be also applied to the facades that is in certain conditions. So I want to show you a very quick clip that how we took this running on the cloud real-time application and brought many people together and connect them in physical virtual worlds. I have a very short clip to share with you. And what was really profoundly inspiring was we received 65,000 people together. It was one of the largest gathering in Europe for a public art, and I believe people came to hug the building. There was a very special love to like Gaudi. And after that, we also right now working on this pretty inspiring engineering marvel in Las Vegas. Maybe you already heard, called the Sphere, an incredible building, and it's using like the Blade Runner media architecture. There is 9.2 million in the individual pixels that have been programmed to make an equirectangular projection on the facade. So we are right now as arts and residents and exploring the wind data of Las Vegas, and we are projecting our Hubble research with NASA JPL, ISS, and also you will be seeing more generative AI outputs on this building in real time. So we are doing these inferences in real time to like reconstruct the weather data to generative AI models and reconstruct these new dreams that the building is becoming this latent space browser, if it makes sense. And then the last part of this keynote, I would love to think about this new, very important topic I believe that we all need to care about is the nature part. In the pandemic, I think this question came so profound that we knew that we could go to nature, but can nature come to us became the biggest, I guess, reality hit for many of us in the pandemic. So this part, New Digital Ecologies that we are calling it, is really focusing, respecting, loving, but still respecting the physical world that we have, but question the creativity and preserving nature. So it was now 5 years ago, started like to deep dive into archives at the Smithsonian. So we have been able to like work with many different types of and AI models But this one specifically was one of the early experiments that there's 16,000 species for 75 million images of like flora systems. We were able to create this AI model. But what was to me missing, yes, we were able to use certain AI models to create the sound of nature. We were able to create this data pigmentation from 75 million flora images. The question was, could we smell this AI? And I know that 5 years ago now, like it was still an obsession. I'm so happy to say that in the pandemic, a dear friend, Eric Saracchi from the Firmenich, who is a 125 years old company who has been helping many institutions about the scent making, they have this research with 500,000 scent molecules. And they have an AI called Charlie. And I kindly, like when the message came, 2019, I guess, and this was just getting ready, so we started to dive into this idea of like, can we smell neural networks? And I know it sounds weird, but we truly made a generative AI scent. So what you see here is 14 scent molecules going through this custom software that was like a computer there, maybe you can see. So we literally let them their AI model to look at our model and find some certain like symbiosis while defining which color to smell and which molecules and so on. So, and then when you enter this room, you were able to let machine to hallucinate the flora systems and hear nature sounds and like hallucination, but also smell this AI model. It was really this very exciting moment that in the public phase and for us as like an art studio, when we see that connection, when neural net goes beyond like image, sound, or text, when the other senses comes in the game, it opened a new like thinking. And I'm pretty confident the future is inspiringly more than just sound, image, and text. I do believe the scent, touch, and taste is 100% what we will be seeing many, many exciting things around that. And I want to read a quote that really, really inspires me so much here from Philip K. Dick. He says, reality is that which doesn't go away when you stop living in it. A simulation is that which doesn't stop when the stories go away. Stories are responsible to our human desire for resolution, but a simulation is responsible only to its own laws and initializing conditions. A simulation has no moral, prejudice, or meaning. Like nature, it just is. I truly believe that the future of generative AI will be also inspiring in different disciplines. For example, the same AI model, this time in real time, interacting, inferencing with the music, while we are pushing through a special scent for the performance in the space. And I can quantifiably say that the impact of bringing generative AI to different fields respectfully and co-creating with the musicians and like other disciplines, there's a beautiful positive future that we can explore. And also, a couple of months ago, we deep dived into the California landscapes and national parks, and our show in Los Angeles, in Jeffrey Deitch Gallery, received more than 1,000 people a day. It was open and free gallery show, but we saw that when the cultural connection with AI and the exhibitions, there's this incredible activation in the society. And I do believe that we will see many different versions of artists practicing in this field as well. And the other topic that I believe that generative AI needs attention is the originality of the data. And I know that I'm not a visual thinker, I'm not a positive thinker, and I know that some artists have been questioning the merit and the originality of the data. As a response, as a studio, we decided to also take this very serious, and 2 years ago, we started to focus one singular project in the deep glaciers. So here, I am personally traveling more than 10 days with like 8 kilometers walking every day with 50 kilograms of gear sometimes. We start like to look at the topic from this fresh perspective by collecting data by ourselves, such as image and the sound and climate and even smell experiments, which we have a scent of this project as well coming. We truly like try to record the data itself through drones and LiDARs and photogrammetries and nerves and like all the recent Gaussian splatters and many others, like try to use the current capturing techniques and be the author of this narrative. It's very hard, but it's possible. I think for artists who are exploring their own tools, their own data sets, it takes a lot of time and resource. Yes, it's not as easy as reaching an existing like database online or like Hugging Face and so on, but there is a lot of beauty for artists to connect with the idea by physically being connected, by challenging themselves. So I heavily advise for any creators, any artists, I truly believe that you will be much more connected from your heart to the project you are doing. And also, last year, we were very privileged to get this very exciting call from the World Economic Forum and UN. And what you are seeing is by the way, we work very closely with Stability AI team as well, and thanks to Emad and his friends. And we truly challenge the system that is currently going every month open source. We were very fortunate to fine-tune a custom model to just focusing on the corals. As we all know, they are dying rapidly due to the climate change, and they are the first that are responding to, unfortunately, our problems in the climate. And the team at UN and the World Economic Forum, they allowed us to deep dive in this topic last year. So these are some of the images that we were able to plot through this tool. I'm calling it tool because not only just shiny pixels, they are right now 3D modeled and to be used underwater with the UN Ocean Preservation team to be able to look if they can reconstruct life underwater. If we can use LLMs or generative AI in this context to reconstruct something so real that perhaps they can give a life back. I'm also able to say that in the World Economic Forum, a place where the politicians are very loud, the art was much louder. I'm happy to say that when generative AI and art used purposefully and scientifically, there was this very positive reaction that created more call for action from the world leaders and beyond. And the last topic that I believe that will connect this narrative to something more hopeful that for any artist working with generative AI, I'm happy to say that we had this beautiful moment happen a couple of weeks ago. So I'm an independent artist. I'm not coming from a classical art education. I don't have a gallery representation. So kind of they call me outlier in the gallery world. But it's very inspiring to say that sometimes it's better maybe to be not in that conditions that are designed for certain conditions. And there's also this funny joke that I heard from a gallery. They said, if you're a dead artist, the best option is Louvre Museum. If you're a live artist, the best option is MoMA. I'm happy to say I'm alive, and we are at MoMA. So truly a joke by the very well-known gallery. And so this is a beautiful project started 2 years ago by the dear Paolo Antonelli, Michel Coe, and Casey Rias. They invited to collaborate for one of the incredible archives. I believe MoMA has one of the best art collections focusing on the pioneers in different disciplines. In this archive, there is also games like Pac-Man and Tetris. It's not just painting and sculptures. And we were so fortunate to look at this archive in collaboration with the art historians and the museum itself. And also thankful for our friends at NVIDIA that we were able to reconstruct a neural network for this purpose. That is not just style gantry, ADA, or something like that. We just have to reconstruct a new model type because of the desire of not mimicking reality. So in this project, the idea was not just speculate a new chance and control systems, but also look for that are maybe offering us a new ways of seeing the same archive in information, and in pigmentation. And the biggest challenge for us was not only training a model, which we trained more than 10 plus models, which many of them failed, and failed meaning not necessarily scientifically failed, aesthetically failed in terms of it was maybe too real to be used, or it was maybe too collapsed in a way that doesn't have the variety of outputs that were inspiring enough. And the most importantly, what you see here is a 4K by 4K media wall that we have to upsample the model from a whole different ways. And we were able to run the piece in real time. There's a microphone and a camera and a weather station data. And we have 2 DGX stations with the recent GPUs. And we were able to run 2 of them like an opera. So one was computing what is next, and every 5 minutes we were plotting new latent spaces. And then they had been triggered by the microphone, camera, and the weather conditions, 3 chapters. Each of them explored the loudness and the movement. Early morning, the students comes in the museum, a very loud and not meditative space, and late afternoons, more meditative, rainy day and sunny day, and so on and so on. So we try to reconstruct these kind of modalities and project the latent space and reconstruct this artwork every single day, like a living artwork. And here on the left side, you can see one of those outputs. On the right side, data pigmentation of the piece. And this was the dialogue between multiple chapters as well. And the piece opened last year in November for only 3 months. And it was a really inspiring moment for our studio that we have been finding these new ways of imagining this world. And then this was a 3 artwork that you can see in different conditions in VV that is this point and line distribution of the again, model that is infused in real time. And the one in the middle is similarly like infinitely and ever-changing. And then on the right side, we have this library of like data pigmentations of hundreds of them that have been like reconstructed based on the reality inputs. And at the end, we have been reaching this data pigmentation. The most wonderful news for the community, I will say, the work received a significant positive reaction, and not only from the art world, but also from the audience. And it received more than 3 million people in 1 year, and 4 times extended. And I'm happy to say that, not only for me, but in the field in general for generative AI, people practicing in these mediums, I do believe there's a major positive hope that the impact of, I think, unsupervised will be quantifiable for other artists. And I'm really hoping that many artists can explore institutions and work with this divine connection with the public space through art making and technology and science. And finally, all these last 9 years of work that we learned that generative AI or data, art, science, and technology creates impact. And quantifiably, it brings people around the world in different conditions and backgrounds, we connect. But I do believe we missed something. We all, I think, missed something while generative AI field was heavily progressing. And we heard this many times from the heroes and mentors and pioneers that the speed of development in AI is significantly faster than that we think and digest and learn and perceive. We thought that as a studio, what can be our contribution and how can we take this energy, something, a gift to humanity, a place to be. So today, I would like to share our dream, not LLM, not another like a product service, an idea that I hope that everyone resonates. So we would like to create this AI research on nature. And I'm calling it large nature model. Maybe it's an interesting name or not, but to me, what is from my heart important is the focus on nature. So I'm very happy to say that at the moment, as a studio since the beginning of the year, we work very closely from our hearts and with really pioneers of the field, such as like thanks to friends at Google that donate this incredible cloud research, and NVIDIA friends donate like incredible computational resources, and also this incredible, I hope also have the MIT's profound support. We would love to create this open source, free, the best nature model in the world that I hope is a gift back to humanity. And it's not just using these incredible institutions' research and respectfully, but also we are, as a studio, flying, traveling 16 locations that we learned that very important rainforests, which are the largest biomes of humanity. And when I say that it's a very uncomfortable zone, but it's a beautiful place to be. I hope you, as scientists working with data, I really hope that you can touch your data. It's an incredible feeling. And I'm really coming from this experience that I showed you in the beginning, that where my name comes from. And being in the rainforest is an incredible feeling. It creates profound connection with the data, and hear the nature, understand nature, and live in the nature with the jaguars and snakes and animals. But most importantly, when we think about advisory in academia, I know we have mentors, professors, we have incredible heroes. Also, I have another interesting maybe coming, but our advisors for this research, one of the 2 advisors of the research is Chief Nishiwaka and Putani. And they are an incredible people called Yawanava. They are 1,000 people living in Amazonia, Acre, and for thousands of years, and their life can be spent more than 100 years. They are so happy and connected. They inspired the movie Avatar. I'm sure you may remember it. But to me, 2 years ago when we met, it was a very profound connection, not necessarily our civilized world of westernized, rich research universe, but it was this ancestral wisdom, I guess, that I was completely differently thinking about. And it's not just like, living there and retreat or whatever. It's truly connecting with the young minds as well. And at the moment, we are truly helping them. They are helping us for our AI research. And we are also like co-creating with them and showing exciting research from their side, our side. A beautiful collaboration is happening. But I want to show you one generative AI research project that I think why this project is different. So the chief, Nishiwaka and Putani, is dreaming that one day, next year, they are believing that if they can connect all the first people of Amazonia in one event, they believe they will have this great consensus and preserve the nature for us, right? They are living in the forest. They're not just the lungs of the forest. They are the heart of the forest. And his dream was one day to make this conference in Amazonia. And then for this reason, they asked us to co-create an artwork to fundraise. So here's our generative AI project called Winds of Yawanava. So for this project, young Yamanava artist, very first time, drove paintings. You remember the canoes, right? That I shared my name, Chana Canoe. The canoe is what they draw in these beautiful paintings. But they couldn't draw so many, and we need more than 1,000. We asked them, with their permission, we customize and fine-tune an AI model and generate these 1,000 artworks. And to give them much more inspiring layer, we also install this beautiful weather station and create each of them moving by the weather data of the rainforest. And at the end, we raised more than $2 million on Web3, open and transparent, no bank, no institution, pure, transparent support that they will be able to next year create their first school, first museum, and hopefully first village to bring people together. So generative AI can be profoundly, quantifiably, incredibly helpful for humanity. And I want to finish my presentation with the words of a wise man that I met that died, unfortunately, under 7 years old. He said, "It's new times we are living now. Time for forgiveness, time for love, time for spirituality. It's time for humanity to look back to the origins, to the earth, to our hearts, to learn, to love, and respect one another, to make alliances, join forces. This is the moment." Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Rafiq, for this really nice talk. We have some time for a couple of questions. Does anybody in the audience have any questions? I'll give some time to the audience. There's one question right there in the back, I think. Please go ahead.
Rafiq, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for coming. As you know from our encounters over Zoom, we're both educators, and I'm Caroline from the School of Architecture and Planning, and I want to ask you about the discourse work that you do in connection with your visual art. So the words dream, hallucination, consciousness, unconscious. I find these a bit of a problem because the public doesn't really know how the stochastic probabilistic algorithms work. So you are behind the curtain, and you use words that, to me, give a false humanistic gloss to a project that is fundamentally machinic. So I want to just ask you if you and your team think about this vocabulary and if you can give us new words for these projects, because people are confused. So I just want to leave you with that provocation because you're in a position of incredible influence. You're the go-to guy. So the art world needs you to provide us with vocabulary more than we grasp, right? So some of the critics have said like, ooh, love the lava lamp, right? These are the vocabularies that we come up with, so can you help us innovate in this discursive realm? Thank you.
Thank you very much. By the way, I believe ChatGPT writes better than that critic, so I'll be honest. But I think one of the things that I believe many artists that I found Connection 101, they barely inspired from something creating real. Like I barely found an artist friend, very early days of like these generative AI tools, they didn't have that connection of another chair or another item, object, or word. I think at the MoMA project we had this very deep discussion with Michel Coe and Paolo Antonelli, and also art historians, that the agency, the autonomous systems that we are all imagining for the health and safety of humanity is something very important and profound. But when it comes to, first of all, to me, art is humanity's capacity of imagination. And I think artists are also the alarm mechanisms of humanity. So when artists try to be the alarm of the world that we may go later, they found ups and downs of those systems. And then when we think about that critical discourse, which is extremely important, they sometimes fall short because they only focus on the hysteria, they only focus on the paranoia of a system, and they somehow couldn't truly look from their heart and like clearly before they become another critic, if I can say. But also there's this balance in between saying also very bright positive things as the first lecture we heard. So my role in my practice, I found, because we are art studio, work with scientists, work with institutions that maybe never connected in their practice, we found this unique space where unbiasedly look at the tools and the data sets and create discourse and context. I still believe hallucination is a word much profoundly connected. I cannot say dreams because I have one deep dialogue with a neuroscientist said that you should not call dreams because this is hallucination. Anil said, by the way, maybe you know his TED talk, he said consciousness is a controlled hallucination. And he said that it's better to call hallucination than dreams perhaps right now because the consciousness is a very profoundly challenging word for scientists that will not be easy to call a dreams later. So keep the hallucination. Looks like I'm more connected as a scientist. So this was one feedback, to be honest, one of them. So I do these dialogues between scientists and thinkers to look from their perspective. I know one thing, as an artist, creating art from heart is one way of starting, and the rest comes later. But my purpose with the work is just simple, like create inspiration, joy, and hope. And I can use any words that creates these three things. I'm happy to use any words that resonates with the world.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful talk. Thanks so much.
Thank you.